Your Honor.
Okay. So 2,714 million, am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
That is, how much of an increase is that relative to the 2025 budget that was passed?
That is 20% less, Your Honor.
20% less. So that means the budget that was passed in 2025 is around 3 billion. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So 2.7 billion is a lot of taxpayer money. Could you please explain to the audience what exactly the PCO, can you provide a brief explanation to the audience of what are the tasks of the PCO?
Your Honor, the PCO is the President's arm in promoting transparency and accountability in his policies, as well as, they serve as the window to show his most important future plans. They ensure that all regions in the country have access to commercial media, and they provide the vital information for all the help the public can get for the government's policy.
Mm-hmm. So is it purely for domestic or also for international purposes?
For both, Your Honor.
For both. Okay. And as you previously mentioned in one of the previous interpellators, there is a need for the budget due to ASEAN. What exactly will you be doing there?
We are gunning for a seat, a non-permanent seat, because a UN Security Council seat, we could gain substantial influence by participating directly in decision-making in pressing global issues. We can the country can have a platform to advance its foreign policy objectives and promote our national interests within the global security framework, which is very, very important for the issues we face now, Your Honor.
So the purpose of it is for the UN Security Council seat. Will it be done through ASEAN?
No, magkaiba yun, Your Honor. Of course, we will use the ASEAN, of course, to put us in a good light, in a way, to justify. Of course, if we are put in a good light, it is in a form of like a public relations, so we can showcase to the world why we should be nominated and elected for a seat in the UN Council, Your Honor.
So the ASEAN is the necessary initial step in our country's publicity on the international stage, which would lead to a higher chance of getting the UN Security Council seat.
No, we have already initiated, affirmed our hosting, our schedule. We are really scheduled to host for the ASEAN for 2026, Your Honor.
And on what basis are you stating that hosting the ASEAN would increase our chances of getting a UN Security Council seat?
Sorry, Your Honor, can you repeat your question?
On what basis are you assuming that hosting the ASEAN and providing a successful event for the ASEAN will increase our chances of getting a UN Security Council seat?
There's no assurance, complete assurance, Your Honor, if that is what you're asking. The ASEAN next year is a different one than for our bid for the UN Security Council seat. We are just putting our country in a good light, of course. Hindi naman po maganda na hindi rin po tayo, being the host of the ASEAN in May, hindi rin po maganda na hindi naman po natin ilalagay ang sariling atin in the best possible light po, Your Honor.
Okay, but my question still remains, is the budget for the ASEAN or for the purpose of securing a UN Security Council seat?
Your Honor, it's mostly ASEAN po. Sa ASEAN po, yung budget po ng PCO, Your Honor.
So the potential of securing a Security Council seat is only speculation, it's only a bonus if ever we were to succeed.
magkakasama po sila. Of course, again, it's no guarantee. Bid lang po natin yun sa yung UN Security Council non-permanent seat, Your Honor.
But if there is a direct correlation, or if you're unsure if there's a direct correlation to our success in ASEAN to the UN Security Council seat, then you're just basing it purely on speculation. You cannot base such a large budget of 2.7 billion on speculation whether or not we would get the UN Security Council seat.
With the indulgence of the Honorable KIKO BARZAGA, if he may allow me, just to align everything, I believe the sponsor mentioned the total budget of the PCO, including its attached agencies and corporations, and that's the more than 2 billion. Can the distinguished sponsor confirm this? Can the distinguished sponsor confirm it? It's the total budget of the PCO, including attached agencies and corporations.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, Your Honor.
Yes. However, incorporated in the budget, as the concern of the Honorable BARZAGA has stated earlier, is a budget for the ASEAN. Does this mean that the Philippines is hosting ASEAN meetings and gathering?
Yes, Your Honor. We have 167 clusters of meetings for the ASEAN.
Okay,
So
and for
would
that,
be
just
for
to
the bulk.
clarify the Honorable BARZAGA's question, how much within the budget of the PCO will be allocated for the ASEAN? Maybe a ballpark figure. And am I correct, Honorable KIKO BARZAGA? That's the contention that you would like to pursue.
Yes, so the problem here is creating a budget based on speculation. If one of our goals is the UN Security Council and ASEAN is just a speculative case for that, or for our chance of getting a seat in the UN Security Council, then the portion intended for ASEAN is just based on speculation.
Well, with the indulgence of the distinguished sponsor, actually the ASEAN is a different entity. The UN Security Council is a seat that every country aspires, but there's no corresponding budget for that. The ASEAN is a platform where all governments can talk to each other, lobby with each other, and put forward the interests of our country above our neighboring ASEAN countries. Distinguished sponsor, please
That is
proceed.
correct. For clarity, the Deputy Speaker has clarified everything, Your Honor.
Okay, so it is completely separate that our purposes for hosting the ASEAN is not directly connected to our desire for a UN Security Council seat. Am I correct?
Can you repeat that again, Your Honor? Sorry.
Our purposes and our budget allocation for the hosting of ASEAN is not directly connected to our desire for a UN Security Council seat.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
That is a different occasion, Your Honor. It's a different.
Okay. What percentage of the PCO proposed budget would be spent on ASEAN?
Around 600 million for the ASEAN, Your Honor.
And what role would the PCO fill for the ASEAN?
They will be the primary agency to put our country in the best possible light. They will do the digital content. They will do all the communication in radio, print, billboard, all forms of media before, during, and after the ASEAN, Your Honor.
And primarily, the large percentage of the expenses there would be through advertising. Am I correct?
Not entirely, Your Honor.
What percentage would be through allocated to advertising for the ASEAN?
With due courtesy to the Honorable BARZAGA, maybe the distinguished sponsor can explain that this budget encompasses all the trainings, meetings, the representations, as well as how our country will package, how PCO will package our country and position it
Yeah.
against our neighboring.
Yes, Your Honor, we will have all kinds of meetings, clustered meetings, and it will really entail a lot of expenses, professional services. We have our representation expenses. International media will come in. international media centers will be put up, so that will constitute the bulk of all that expense, Your Honor.
So we will also be paying for the expenses of international media arriving here.
Your Honor, we will be the hosts, so it's automatic that we will, of course, be as the hosts. We will have to do
Just-
expenses for that.
And how much are we expected to spend on that?
As was said, Your Honor, as I mentioned, advertising expense, representation expense, media clusters, a lot of media cluster groups will be conducted. International media will come in. Those kinds of things, Your Honor.
Just to clarify, the international media coming in are guests. We don't pay for them, we don't spend for them, but we provide food for them. This is that
For the International Media Center, Deputy Speaker and Your Honor.
so basically the ASEAN is a platform to put forward all the interests of our country, including collaboration. And we laud the distinguished sponsor.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. The Deputy Speaker has put some clarity in all that, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. That would be all. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to our distinguished sponsor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, Majority Leader.